This is 2OF Entertainment.
Oh, here we are back. How exciting.
That is exciting.
I know.
The sun came up and I got up and I'm on the right side of the green grass.
Wow. That's what gets you excited, huh? Okay, good to
I'm
know.
excited. I get excited
There
about
you go.
that. I wake up and say,
I
guys,
thought you're going to be excited
we're
about the new opening with that new flag with that extra star. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so we got I just want to say my condolences to the Maple Leafs um, because the Florida Panthers basically, I don't want to say kicked their tookuses because it took them
Yep,
7
enough,
games, but
yep.
the Panthers did win. So there you
Enough
go.
of
So,
sports. Yeah.
enough of sports. Yeah, we're done. Except for the Knickerbockers, who are in the NBA Finals. So if they don't screw it up, they can actually be the world champs or whatever they are.
There you go. Well,
There you go.
we still have a Canadian team in the ring running, the Edmonton Oilers. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens with the NHL. See
All
what
right. There you
and with
go.
the playoffs, and boy, that really puts a time code on this interview. We know now.
Yes. Right.
Anyway, we got a very interesting artist save, something very different that we've never had on the show before in art. And Margaret Bremner is a Zentangle, I guess, inspired artist, I'll call it. She's moved past the basic Zentangling. And when you look at this form of art, it's I guess they call it it's a method of creating structured patterns or tangles, as they call them, using simple shapes and dots, lines, curves, and it's known for relaxing and your accessible art form for people of all levels of skill levels. So you can be young or old to work on this, but it does have a lot of art therapy, mental health issues. So it can do a lot of stress reduction. If you do, it's sort of like really super cool doodling
Okay.
in a controlled manner, so they become creative art pieces. Like it's cool,
Right.
and you can use mixed media and a bunch of different things. But now Margaret's been doing it for a long time,
Right.
and she's become very proficient at it. So instead of them being just little 4x4s or 6x6s, she's now become 30 inches and some of the bigger pieces. So
Wow.
they're quite complicated in what they do, but I love the rhythms and forms in them, and they have um, they're very interesting relative to say a traditional landscape or an abstract. So I say these are more like beautiful abstracts that are very refined. Excuse me. So
I've
maybe
seen her work. It
yeah,
is beautiful, and I'm sure she'll correct you on the doodling part. But yes, I like 'cause, but absolutely gorgeous. So if you're new to the show or you've been a fan of the show, watch the whole thing. I've seen all 14 of what they're going to show. Absolutely, and in the middle is where it starts getting, for lack of a better term, more colorful and more intricate, and it's just fascinating. So I'm looking forward to this.
yeah. Well, let's bring Margaret in.
All right. Margaret, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before you scold Paul on the doodling, I'm going to leave. And I will see you guys at the end of the show and have a wonderful interview. Cheers.
Thank you.
Well, good morning to you.
Hi,
Yeah.
Paul.
Yeah. Well, it's this is a pleasure. We've tried to get this interview to get, excuse me, for quite a while, and you're like the sun's just getting up where you are, and we're just basically our time goals trying to get these things together. But
Is what
sharing this,
doing
yeah,
up so early.
yeah, it's a bit early, but we can watch these anytime we like, so it's kind of a nice thing to do. Ken, so I did a little intro on Zentangle, and I've known you've done this for many years.
That's right.
So, can you tell us a little bit about Zentangle? What is Zentangle to start with? How you
Um,
determine what that is?
I encountered it in late 2009, I think. It wasn't very old at that point, maybe a couple of years. And I was looking for something else on the internet and came across Zentangle, all those rabbit holes. And I have always loved intricate detail, and I've always preferred drawing to painting. I don't know, I feel like I have more control over it or something. And so it felt like I had kind of met my tribe when I encountered Zentangle, although it wasn't until 2010 that I actually went down to the States to learn about it from the founders. And that was a wonderful event. So Zentangle was designed by or developed by a couple in the States, Maria Thomas and Rick Roberts, who she was a master calligrapher, and he had come in to talk to her about something, and she was so engrossed in her art that she didn't hear him talking. And they realized at that point that maybe they could come up with something for other people to sort of approach that kind of meditative state where the rest of the world disappears. And they worked on it for a while and came up with what they called Zentangle, which is based on structured patterns. So the various, what they call tangles or patterns, have a series of simple steps, ideally fewer than 6, to arrive at some lovely pattern.
Oh, really?
Okay. And they also decided that it would just be black and white and pencil, to avoid all the need to know how to mix colors and what goes together and what doesn't, and that it would be very small. So the Zentangle working paper, called a tile, is 3.5 inches square. So you probably can finish it in one sitting. You don't have this pile of growing unfinished projects in the corner of your living room.
Right. And I think with artists, a lot of times it's being able to accomplish something, I guess, sophisticated looking, and it's finished in one sitting. You think, how can I do that? See, well, a lot of times it's size reduction to start with.
Right.
And yet you want to keep your quality up and you want to keep it going on. So can you put these tiles together so they can be, you collage them together? So say you could make larger pieces from them if you did that?
I have done that a couple of times. I'm pretty sure you don't have an example of one of those. But
I think we do have one of multiplicity, but
okay, could
I
be.
think there's
Yeah.
one black and white multiplicity piece, but I don't know if it's been, we'll get to it, and I don't know if it's been pieced together or whether it's all one ongoing piece that you work on. It's sort of like, I sort of look at these things and I said, what if I screw up one of these squares? What happens?
Well, that's another thing that in Zentangle, when you get your little kit of supplies, there's and they also wanted to give people quality supplies. So it's not a ballpoint pen and copy paper, but there's a Sakura micron pen. There's some lovely Italian paper. Put in the little sizes. There's a graphite pencil. There's no eraser. Because there's no eraser in life. And there's
I like that fact. I mean,
yeah. So if you do something you didn't plan on or you don't really like, you go with it and you make it into something else, or take the opportunity to explore a different path.
Yeah. I used to play a game with my grandsons, and it was, you make a doodle on a piece of paper and then they continue the doodle with one line. Everybody does one, goes around the table and keep doing one line until you come up with some kind of a shape. And it's very cool to see how their minds think. It's very relaxing in a way, and it's as it moves along, it's kind of real, I found a lot of times the pieces, you do it a whole bunch of times, they look similar because your minds think in a similar way, but a lot of times they turn into silly portraits. I don't know what it is. They just turn into a portrait type shape, but they're kind of fun to play with. Kids that have nothing to do on a rainy day, they're not on their devices.
Right.
Anyway,
Hooray.
but Zentangle kind of reminded me of that, and I think I've been intrigued by it. And I thought, okay, well, if I was to sit and do doodles, and I've, sit there down the side of your history book, and you'd be doodling down the, the right hand column, and not paying attention to the instruction of the day.
Well,
But
and they say that they say it often helps if you're in a meeting or on a phone call to just doodle at the side, and that helps you retain
yeah,
information better.
excuse me.
So, people who do Zentangle do not like it being called doodles
I know. I,
because doodling is something you kind of do while your mind is somewhere else, and Zentangle, your mind is quite focused on the drawing that you're doing.
yeah. In music, it's called noodling.
Yes,
Where
yeah,
the guy just kind of rambles on a piece of
right, yeah.
noodling. But I don't say that in a negative way, but
No, I know, I know.
I say it in a way that it means that anybody can do it.
Exactly, that's
I
right.
think that is the context, that it's not really age related. Like you could be a
No,
young person and still do a simpler one and understand how it goes. And as you get more senior and developed, you can work on it in a more senior manner.
right,
And
and you don't need really any art training at all. I mean, if you can write your name, you could do
there you
Zentangle.
go. Yeah. So how would this be, like the therapy aspects of it? Like we're always interested in talk about art therapy,
Hmm.
and it seems to be one of those things that it might help, I guess, the thinking in your brain, the way your brain thinks, and you're communicating with your hand as to what you want done, but you're working within a system a little bit.
Right. I don't know a lot about the art therapy aspects. It wasn't designed for that, but a lot of people who have trained as teachers and others as well have noticed things when people are doing Zentangle drawing and wanted to do some research into that. The thing that I particularly noticed.
So I'm going to get Steve to start our first picture up here. So we just get our first image up. So this is more than just a black and white um, image on this one.
Yes, this is on tan colored paper with brown ink, um, brown and sepia tones. And then I had these buttons that have actually little holes in the buttons. And I held the button at an angle on the paper and traced the shadows a few times
Oh, nice.
before I started doing the drawing. And then I actually put some of the buttons through the paper because I thought they were so nice.
Yeah. So you're doing some collage with it, like
Uh,
basically with found objects.
Yes,
Yeah. Now those objects are representational of the shape that you're working with, in circles and
that's
rounds.
right.
I like the idea of the shadows. I mean, that gives it personalization. Like it really, nobody else is doing that. Like it's this new art form that is being pushed by each individual, and it's inks and color. It's not gobs of paint, and it's not a lot of those things. They're done, like you said, in a very finesse way, like you're with a pen and ink. So do you work with a watercolor or something like that on with them, or mixed media?
Not on this particular piece. The shading in there is with colored pencil,
Okay.
although I did get into, um, I sometimes do washes either with acrylic or water soluble pencils, sometimes with liquid ink.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, because more and more I've gotten into sort of taking this method way outside the classic thing.
Well, you are, yes, for sure. And that's why we're talking about this. Like it, I mean, if
Yeah,
you're working within a kit system, everybody gets kind of the similar look when you work with the kit. But when you take the kit and you take all the parts out and you reassemble it any way you want and use the pieces you want, and it becomes very personal as to your way of communicating, I guess I'll call it, through your art, right? Rather than just saying it's a kit. So like, yeah.
right.
But in an abstract sense, and they are abstracts, like if you really think about it, but in a controlled manner, in a really controlled manner. So
Yes.
So so what happens when there's a mess up? What do you do? Like, how do you say, like you said, oh, you just move on to the next one, and do you just shade it in and make it a solid, or do you put something over it, or do you move, like, say your pen spits or makes a mess on your lines aren't symmetrical when you're making your diminishing lines, like your circles. If something messes, do you then just make it a wonky circle? Is that how that kind of concept goes?
Sure, yeah, or um, change it to a checkerboard pattern, or do something on top of it, or just fill it in dark. And often used to tell students that if you make a mistake somewhere, just repeat it a couple of times elsewhere, and then it looks like you were intended to do that.
Right. So this is what I'm saying. Like it's a stress reliever, right? There is no. It'll always be a finished piece, and you can make it look like something at some end. It's just, you just figure out how to blend it in with something, or repeat it, or create a what is the right answer. So what you start at isn't necessarily what you're going to end at. Like, if you've got a planned idea where you want to go and where you end up, it could be quite different.
It could be with the classic Zentangle. There's no planned idea of what you're trying to end up with. If in my case, if I'm doing houses or trees or something, there's the idea of houses or trees, but it can, you can still have a glitch happen. The gremlins get in.
So are there books on Zentangle on how to do it?
Yes, there are. There are quite a few out now, and in various languages. And
so people who might want to try this, they can get a book or go online, I would think.
yes, yeah, there is a website, zentangle.com.
There you go.
Also has a list of certified teachers, so you can see if there's one in your area.
Here's 4 separate little pieces. So these are smaller than, so these are like 4x4s or 3.5, 3.5s?
3.5 inches or 9 centimeters. These are what I would call classic Zentangles, because they're black and white and the gray of the pencil, and that's small size.
They feel very Art Deco to me. They have this Art Deco because of the repeat pattern symbols that go on. Very Art Deco. There's the top right one feels very Deco, and the bottom left one's very Art Deco. Also, they all are, like the bottom right one. They almost feel, the bottom one and the right feels very Celtic. Like you talk about this, the designs that come from, that were in Persia right to Scotland, the Celtic design, I think traveled through all the people, and they all took a piece of it, and they all did their own little, whether you're doing ornate pieces around rugs or on jewelry.
Yes, yeah.
But I could see, silversmiths doing on the bottom right, it could be that kind of feeling for a corner on something, or
an old brooch.
Jewelry, especially. And actually some of the woven tapestries and fabrics that were produced in those, 12th century, 13th century, some of that stuff was beautiful. I could never figure out how they could create a loom that could do those kind of shapes. And, like, it was amazing. But I'm still amazed at, Zentangling to be able to do this bottom, and they're somewhat different, but they're the same. They all have this feels very triangular, this one on the right, and then the one on the left is made out of little triangles that all together, and there's this little egg thing in the middle, and just this like, it's juicy. It just feels like this gorgeous bow tie, it's just like,
yeah.
I think I
was just going to say, one of the keys to Zentangle is that you do the initial sort of scribble or just random lines in pencil, and then you do the patterning in pen, so that at the end you don't really, like, if you outlined every area you were doing in, it would be very clear. Okay, this area is like this, and this area is like this. But when you leave the design lines in pencil, the change from pattern to pattern becomes kind of, oh, why did that change there?
Oh, really? Well, I just see, the complexity of lines that go over and under, like trying to plan that to make sure you say, I want this one to go over and I want that one to feel like it's going under. So there's this woven texture feeling to them. And especially the one on the bottom left where we see on that top left quadrant in that one, the weaves are over and under. But I think I really like the snap of the dark black. Like there's good contrast. That's part of what you're developing is this contrast.
Yes.
The one on the top right feels like this beautiful striped candy, and in some ways I can see it being red. It's one of those, that striped candy look to it, but it's got that, and they have that little glisten. I love the look. So how did you create that? So it's got that glisten that goes all, it gives a three-dimensional feel on the edges of that.
Yeah, just before I tell you about that, I'll mention that another key element in Zentangle is the pencil shading. And that's what makes things seem like they're going behind other things. So once all the ink drawing is done, then you go back in with your pencil and you add the color shading. That's in the lower right one. That's what makes the sort of flared ends of the rectangles, if I can say, seem like they're going under the next one. But in the top right one that you were mentioning, where it has almost glistening or highlights, that's just the black pen, rather than drawing a firm line where the glisten is happening. Just used sort of a feathery edge and a feathery edge on the other side, and it gives you that light of effect.
But it has a very nice subtle lift to it, makes it come off the page. And these folds that are all petals that are all held together. It feels like this ornate blossom, in a flower where it's kind of cool. I like it. It's relaxing.
Where the black lines all come together with the pencil shading there makes it seem like that's going into somewhere. If this had no pencil shading, it would be quite flat.
Yes, it would. Yeah, I can see that. There is a lot of skill involved in what you want it to do, right, for you. So as your skills develop, it's sort of like playing checkers. You can play checkers complicated or simple. And that's sort of how this one works as well. If you're 6 or 7 years old, you might be looking at it in a simpler way. But if you're, in your 20s and 30s, you've gone through a life of, maybe some learning, and like you take a couple of workshops where you've done a bit of research. And I think that, so this is the one I talked about, the multiplicity of images. I did a bit of a blow up on the right-hand side. So people
I appreciate that. Yeah, because the
detailing a little bit better on the squares.
Right.
So this is a blow up of the section, probably over to off center top and off center bottom.
Right off center. Well, if you go to the very center intersection, it's the 4 below that.
It's the 4 squares, right off the center point.
Yeah.
But it's so did you work on this as one large piece, or were they separate pieces put together?
It is one large piece of paper. There is collage on it because I wanted sort of that checkerboard feel of dark and light.
Yep.
So I needed to darken some areas and lighten up some others. And then I wanted different patterns or textures in some of them. So some of the squares are collage. Some are drawn on the original paper.
Right.
Then the circles, there are 4. I think there are 5, but I can't find the 5th one. Is metal leaf, silver metal leaf on there for what I call moons.
No, it's so what happens with these circles that you've got these circles that float through the piece, and the big beige one, and oval. They float around in the piece. They kind of give you another level, because all of a sudden there's a circle working within squares. So it's something you wouldn't normally think of doing. Like, it's like, okay, this is a square motif, a gridded square motif with things happening within each square, but then you have these floating bubble circles that are, what did that come from?
Yeah, those are the silver leaf, and I love to start any piece with random marks. Like sometimes that will be a wash, sometimes it'll be a scribbling, sometimes it'll be anything that will give me random marks that I then look at and turn around and see what can I see in there. So these orbs, those silver leaf orbs, would have been part of that random scribble, or at least most of a circle. And because I was eventually went with the idea of moons, that large one may have been added because it's pretty evenly on that intersection.
Right. Yeah, it's like a cross points that are going in behind it. Yeah, positioned that way. No, I like them. It's sort of like a here's all the marks you can do with Zentangle. Like, it's like here and that, here and that. It's like this beautiful reference piece that you can put on your wall and say, I want to do that kind of texturing. I mean, a lot of artists can, if they're doing abstract works and they're looking for different types of line structures and mark making, and he said, do they create similar things but different pencil marks and put it on a little square and put it on a wall and say, if I need a pencil mark, that's the kind of mark I'm looking for my next work. A lot of us don't. We have sketchbooks we do things in. So, do you do stuff like spontaneous things like that in a sketchbook, or are these individual sheets of paper that you work on mostly?
Individual sheets of paper, and I'm gradually amassing a collection of papers that could be cut up. Something I encountered shortly before I did this piece is something called ecemic writing, which is something that looks like writing, but it doesn't actually say anything, like in that detail.
It's like doctors' signatures and stuff.
Yeah, right, exactly. So some of these pieces, whatever the marks are, okay, in that detail that you've put up, the top left corner is some of this ecemic writing, but then I needed to white in some of the background to make that come out more. On the one beside it, on the top right, I went into the background and made that black so that other things would stand out, and left kind of a border around some of the lines.
Yeah. You can definitely see how the lines are kind of connected on the bottom two panels, where it traverses from the dark into the light area, where the text this writing thing is connected. Laterally
to those lines. Yeah.
Well, I think understanding that these things can do that, and I think they do connect as well on the top one, where the one circle loops around and hooks into the other one that's reversed back the other way. So they have connections. It just feels you need to look at it and say, oh, they belong together. They're connected. One's black, one's white.
Cool. Yeah, and I think that helps with the feeling of integration of the whole piece. Like, it's not something you notice unless you really look at it. The details.
Yeah, I guess that's why I mentioned that. This one, yeah. Now this is very different compared to the other pieces. This is more organic. It just feels it's growing, and there's a story in here. It's very Miro-like in feeling. It feels amoebic. There's this microscopic look of something, and
a bit, yeah. Well, I called it a storm on the mountain because it seemed like there was a lot going on in the sky up there. There's kind of
and I can see that, and it becomes an abstract tangible about understanding, but it's kind of a Kandinsky feeling. That is it a mobile, because all these lines are connecting and holding these things together, but or is it a Miro in that these beautiful circles and odd, and they're not circles where the other ones were like conform shapes. Like the very first one we saw in your opening was very round, but
Mm,
these are very organic in shape. They're
right.
ovally squished ovals and things, and then the connecting lines really are beautiful. I mean, it feels like this game of Connects, where all the little what do you call them? They were tinker toys that would be
Oh, yes, right.
there with the
Yeah,
little bars, but they feel very. Understanding this is a this can be Zentangle, and you've added color to it. It's not black and white anymore.
right. And there are certainly structured patterns in there. It's kind of a lesson on various ways to fill an orb. But
But
also, if you look at the light area, the white areas of the sky, you can see that I filled it all with parallel lines because I needed to lighten that whole area up. But I don't like filling. I could have just filled those in white, but I
right,
felt like that would be less interesting.
this is a very gorgeous piece, and it's how big is this one? About
About 12 by 9, maybe?
okay, so it's a decent size. But I can only imagine this thing being 3 feet. A large piece,
Right.
subject matter, and the feeling and the impact that it would give you um, is very different. The a lot of the indigenous works they'll work within a shape with these shapes. The textures within, say, a raven, and then all of a sudden they will draw the wings and how they're all. There's a story, I guess I'll say, within
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
that's what I see here. There are stories within these orbs. The connections and the connecting dots, the lines are kind of cool. It's but very different in understanding that it doesn't have to be black and white. You can do what you like to do, and
Mm,
if you want to add color, you can add color. It's gorgeous.
exactly. Yeah.
This one's very soft. This one very, very plant-like. Yeah, so it can be shapes people like. They don't have to be an abstract only, but um, can you talk about this one a little bit about
Yeah.
what
This
the
one I called Dew on Peonies. And I have done, not so much lately, but I have done a lot of eco dyeing of paper because that's another way to get random marks for me to start with. So
okay.
the two leaves on the lower right, that's pretty much what was eco dyed onto the paper. I didn't do much with that except possibly draw a couple of lines.
Hmm.
But then the flowers, um, some of those would have been lines that I saw on the paper,
Okay,
but developed quite a bit and then colored differently.
right. So it what you did is you're inspired by the spontaneity of something that pre-existed. That
Right.
where your
Yeah.
paper had a stain in it or a mark, and you say, "Oh, let's develop that into something," in a way, and then your colors you choose are. I hear a dog in the background.
Oh, that's probably my my granddaughter upstairs disagreeing with something.
Yeah. There we go. So we got this beautiful leaf. I guess again, probably extension of the previous piece a little bit, in that you see a structured leaf, but within it you have the Zentangle that's happening within the shape. Is that proper to say that, or is that
Yeah, this was done originally. I did 4 very similar ones for a swap that I was going to do with 3 other artists around, another one in Canada, someone in Australia,
mhm,
and someone somewhere else. I forget where. Um, but this is a Gary oak leaf, and the Gary oak tree is native to the northwest coast of North America. And I think I had an actual pressed leaf that I traced around. And
yeah,
then many Zentangle patterns fit nicely in stripes or border kind of design. So that fit very nicely into a leaf idea, with the veins.
Yeah.
I don't know why I came up with that circle gem kind of thing to add to it, but there it is.
Well, it feels very, I guess, seed-like or sun-like. It doesn't. I think it adds interest in that it's not just bang a leaf with that's filled in and interestingly done so, but all of a sudden this circle now makes sense. Like it's natural. It feels like nature, and it feels like part of the world.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sort of relates nature in a nature way to the leaf. And I just realized now, if I look at the central part, it almost looks like a brown hill with a few clouds and the sunrise sky or something. So
You can see different things in it after you come back to pieces all the time. Yeah.
you do, yeah.
A lot of these pieces, I go, this would be a gorgeous, gorgeous piece in, say, an eco center somewhere where they're talking about their development in their area, and I think Edmonton has an eco center.
Hmm.
From what I'm understanding from another artist that I was talking with, doing the dyeing of paper and looking for. Do you do like cards and things individually for people like that, or?
I haven't done a lot. At one point, I did have a number of cards printed. They were all black and white before I discovered Zentangle, but still very intricate detail.
Yeah.
Now, with the gallery that I'm with here in Nanaimo, I'm making individual cards so that each one is an
Unique.
individual, unique piece.
Yeah. Well, you can do that when they're 3.5, 4 inches. They fit nicely in a small format. But
Yes, although the cards are more rectangle things, but yeah.
yeah, I just find when people buy one of those, they're probably going to frame it. So
I
like
suspect that happens. Yeah.
yeah, they're hard to say. How do I send one of those in the mail? And think, oh my goodness, are they going to appreciate it at the other end? The amount
Right.
of time and work that goes into making them.
A
Gorgeous.
really cheap way to get an original piece of art.
It is, and it's great if it had a bunch of artists or people doing them and transferring back and forth, trading. Like they make a great trading card of some kind.
Well,
And
artist trading cards are great fun too. I've done a few of those swaps.
right, yeah. It's what is really nice about trading cards is, say you had a half a dozen artists and they all make 6 pieces, and you send one, and you get one of everybody's back. So you end up 6 pieces
Mhm.
back on the other side. So it's nice. It's a nice way to do things. I can see the development to this stage from your previous stuff, but it's very garden-like. I love. This is a gorgeous piece.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I just started with a few blobs of acrylic paint in some kind of blue and yellow ochre and kind of an olive green, I guess. And then I just smeared them around with a credit card, an old credit card, and let that dry. And then saw sort of a garden marsh
Right.
scene with some sky in the background.
Yeah. So there was no preconceived idea when you started. It was just
None
freehand.
whatsoever.
Sort of
Yeah.
looking at a blank screen, you say, blank canvas, you go in and you squeegee some color out onto it and say,
Yeah.
back a little bit more and see what you see in it. This is a great way to look at things. I think your mind a lot of times is connected, even from the free form aspects of it to the finished piece. I think they have a connection. And
Mm.
yeah. Again, this feels very Celtic to me. It's just that the shapes, and I love the shapes. They're not all just straight up and down, and they've got some movement to them, and yet they're it is a complicated piece in understanding how to build the layering so that
Mhm.
one behind the other one, and the understanding of where do you leave the blue and not fill it in, and why, and you
Yeah,
ask.
a lot of the blue was there, like that little patch in the lower left was there. And I thought, okay, I'm going to have to work around that somehow.
blue, yeah.
And then the edges of things are some maybe filled in with a bit of blue, but you can also see where the blue doesn't fill that entire space.
Yeah. And that little bit of ochre just gives there's a little sparkle to that, to the page, because it's,
Yeah.
it's not brilliant. It's not popping off the page, but the ochre belongs with the green, if you know what I mean. It's like there's
Right.
an aging edge to something, or the sun is coming from something. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
think
still,
that's another reason why I prefer to start with some random marks, because if I didn't, I think my work could end up very stiff.
Mhm.
But the random marks give it some flow and some movement. And
Yeah. So in that case, you paint over sections that that you don't want to be showing as ochre, and the greens go.
that almost in the middle, there's that little kind of seed pod shape and the yellow ochre comes up and kind of goes.
Around it. Yeah.
That was there on the page, that little yellow ochre blip.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so I worked that in, and it really turned out beautifully.
Yeah. No, it did. Oh, lovely. So these ones are really getting fantasial. I love this ones.
Yeah, this is a much earlier piece.
Yeah. It's
It's called,
very celestial feeling. It feels like this beautiful world floating out in the sky and in space. It just these would make a great fairy tale books of some kind. I looked at this thing a couple of times and said, "What is that all about?"
yeah. I think circles come into my work pretty regularly.
Yeah.
Partly I did mandalas for 10 years or so, but partly I focused on mandalas because I really liked the circle and the mandala because of the symbolism involved, and so that was kind of a starting point for me too. But here we've got this circle kind of showing up again, although it's not a mandala.
Yeah. Well, it's not real circle either.
No.
Say you've got there's a real plethora of houses and tangle that's going up that holds that together.
Mhm.
Do any of that have any symbolism to you? The reason for the house?
Um,
You repeat it quite often in your work, and just
I
wonder.
have done. I've gotten out of houses now, which is interesting, and I'm wondering if it was kind of a subconscious domestic thing when I had young children and was um, with family.
Yeah.
Now I'm kind of on my own.
Mhm.
So, and I've always loved onion domes and
Yeah.
bringing in aspects of sort of other cultures. So there's almost like a Dutch step-roofed building there. There's an onion dome. There's
Mhm.
a kind of standard Western peak roofed house. That's
Right.
easy.
And again, we've got this Celtic rope weaving that goes through and around the world. The orb down, you can see the. I don't know if anybody can. Can you see that?
Well, there's kind of a dark pink
Mhm.
background. Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, I'm back. Sorry. No, I
Yeah,
guess I'm just.
below the onion dome, that
There's
dark
a,
that actually is a tangle that I designed to be able to do Celtic interlacing freehand without all the
oh, nice. Yeah.
dots and everything.
I'm just seeing how that that uh, is woven throughout and around. It gives you depth as it goes around the orb. You
Hmm.
know that the one that's got a little silver but red background in between it, and it goes on around to the right where there's a brighter yellow on the right hand side. It goes in behind it.
Hmm.
So as you look at this more and more, I'm picking things out. Like initially, I looked at this and it was very flat. But
Hmm.
as I look at it and follow the railway track in and around and the way I go, I start seeing it's like looking into one of those snowballs, where you shake it up,
Right. Yeah.
but it feels as you turn it, the optics change on you, where they distort and they move around. Like it's sort of like looking in a crystal ball, a little bit
Hmm.
object. And I think maybe that's probably more like if you look through a crystal at something static, you know how it'll stretch or it'll stretch the balls
Fragments.
up things. it changes.
Yeah.
The
And
rectangles.
this being a planet, some of the things on the underside of it, of course, are upside down to the viewer, because on the planet it would go around.
Right. Yeah. But I love the collage of the house structures from around the world. I see this very world-like feeling in it. Beautiful piece. And
Thank
I
you.
mean, we sit here and we talk about it because they're just saying, you know what do I see in it? And I say things, but
Yeah.
sometimes, am I wrong? Yeah, sometimes, but that's what I see it. But I think other
Well,
people do the same thing. They say, well, I like that, or I don't like that, or like, and then they look at it again, they see something different. So I think that's the magic of artwork. You come back tomorrow and you'll see something else in a beautiful piece.
yes. Yeah. This is a relatively early piece of Zentangle art that I did when, of course, in my mandala phase with
Right.
orange and red and dark pink inks.
Mm. They have a
And
doily feel to this one. This feels
I did call it doily, I think. No, I called it Mars. I have a pink one that I called doily.
yeah. Well, and you can see how intricate it is. It's really detailed, and there's a lot of. It's beautifully textured. I just love it, in what it is. And it feels very soft. That's what I
Yeah,
like. It.
this is about probably 8 inches, maybe 9 inches across.
Okay,
Just
that's a decent size. That's a decent size. No, it's a very decent size.
Oh, more houses.
More houses. Well, again, you're saying you love this house theme, and I think artists need that. Use it, like just really use what you like. And this one's got a multiplicity that creates these pointy devices designs, and
Yeah,
it down to the angle of the roofs of the houses in the middle. The roof shapes move around like almost like a clock. They're just
right. Yeah, they all are sort of have the same two sides facing you.
yeah. So where was this one produced for? Like where would this go?
This one actually was a commission
Okay.
from someone who's been a friend for quite a while. She wanted something. I forget exactly what she said, but something about her family and community. And I'm trying to find in there somewhere there are 5 sunflowers together,
Mm.
because her family likes sunflowers and there are 5 people in her family. So that was a bit of symbolism I put in there for them.
Oh, okay. So basically,
Cannot locate them now.
well, it basically is a flower looking. If you look at it straight on, it has an abstract way of looking at it as a flower, the centerpiece, and as they spread out, from the edges. Why not?
Why
That's
not?
what.
Yeah.
Why not? How big is that this piece in itself?
24 inches square.
Yeah, that's a decent size. It's a fair bit of work involved in these things. I just look at the thought process.
Sorry, I missed that.
It's just going through the thought process when building these things, and there is thought actually that goes into it. Yet once you get into it, then the automatic stuff kicks in. I guess your previous things that you've worked on work their way into it, but with a commission, you need to work with an idea. So
Right.
you just can't have it. Whatever turns out, right? Where some of the other ones are a bit more freeform. So this
That's
one,
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
So this has a little bit more structured ending. The customer has to be happy with it, and you want her to be happy with
Right. Right.
that.
Of course. Yeah. And she did want kind of a mandala. Well, that's what I was doing a lot of those days. So that was nice that she wanted what I was
Yeah. So
doing.
where the mandalas? Where did that come from initially? It was just because of the shape initially that you liked, or the symbolisms that are in mandalas, or
I'm not sure when it began. It was some decades ago, dare I say. But the symbolism of the circle being, a symbol of eternity and unity and oneness and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
And then once you get the mandala and start filling in the circle, there's symbolism of interconnection and everything being part of a whole and that kind of thing. So all of that, I just love that symbolism.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, this feels very wholesome. This piece. There's a very wholesome feel to it. Yeah.
So these are
This
some
is
drawings, again, Zentangle inspired, houses and onion domes.
mhm. No, it's
These,
we just we can maybe discuss a little bit about the quadrants. So the house theme is definitely strong at this point in what you're doing.
that's right.
See that, but the now are these all on one piece of paper, or are they just four pieces that were?
They're four separate pieces. The two on the right are the drawings themselves on the 3.5-inch squares. What I tended to do with them was mount them on 5-inch square canvas or boards. And the two on the right are those I mounted, and then I would paint this around in acrylic to go with the work on the paper.
Yeah, no, they're. I like seeing them in context to like four separate pieces together, and saying now my eye can run around and just kind of look at the differences between them and yet the similarities between them. You know,
Right.
you see four worlds basically, and you go, okay, three little houses on stilts on the bottom, and I'm trying to define what am I looking at, because I'm looking for the story. I'm always looking for what is she trying to tell me, where is this going. Would it scare you if you really knew what you're doing when your mind is randomly just building stuff? Take this to the psychiatrist and
Yeah.
say, what have I what should I check in now, or should I keep going? Yeah. It's so the top right one.
Yeah.
I love this one because they're not just little straight houses. They're tucked in around trees, and they're kind of fanning out. There's an optic thing that's happening with the house, and it's just these two houses are joined together in some way, and there's a ton of symbolism in there. Whether there's hills, mountains in the background, and these two little houses that are living out on this little property, So
Yeah. That
it's just
particular one, I started with kind of a wash on the paper, which is why it's a little more maybe mottled looking.
yeah, it's mottled looking. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's nice. It's not as static. It's got some dimension to it,
Right.
and and you haven't done that yourself. It came already pre-manipulated for you, and you just work with that.
Right. And that's probably why the houses are kind of coming up, because that would have been something in the wash that gave me that idea.
Yeah, the idea to go that way, but I think that's the magic of Zentangle. I think that really is the kind of the essence of why it is magic. That these things could be, I call it therapeutic, but it's like it lets your mind just go in one direction and live with what's been given to you. And then the next time you move on to the next thing. And after a while, you have 4 or 5 different pieces, and you've let it help you make the artwork rather than you fighting it all the time, forcing it to be something that you may have a preconceived idea what it should be.
Right. I find when I get an idea and I try and push the work that way, it usually doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like what is the paper saying to me rather than what I want to force onto the paper.
Yeah. I think some artists maybe work that way when they come up to the blank canvas. First thing they do is they color the canvas down something different than white to start with, just to get that starkness away from them and use it as an undercolor. But maybe I think there are a few abstract artists that will just freeform. They'll go in and have an idea of what they see in the background, and away they go, whether it's on paper or on canvas as
Yeah.
well.
And some artists have a very clear concept in their mind of what they want to see when they're done. And that
Yeah.
works for them. It doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Do you have colors that in mind a lot of times when you start? Like, do you want to stay in a
Um,
certain color palette, or is that influenced as well by what the substrate has been stained to or whatever?
it's often influenced by what's on the paper to start with, although I will admit I'm not a big fan of brown, although for some reason I seem to work well with brown.
Mm.
But in doing that staining or washes or whatever, I will try to use colors that speak to me.
Yeah. Getting closer. These are the houses that you're not doing anymore.
That's right. Not so much.
This
But
one has got, oh my goodness, it's very, very urban with the swimming pool, and there's a lot of, can you tell us a little bit about a beautiful design around the whole outside edge? It feels very 1800s-y, a little bit of the, I guess, the steel etchings that used to do the metal etchings
yes,
for plates, and they have that. It's
exactly.
whimsical. I guess I'll call whimsical a little bit.
I
These
think
buildings are.
there is often whimsy in my work.
Mhm.
This, I think the kind of slate gray, the blue gray, may come from a water soluble pencil, ink tints or something like that.
Right.
Uh,
Do you do workshops at all?
I used to, I haven't lately, although maybe I shouldn't say that. This past Saturday, I did 3 workshops in a day at a community building conference, but it wasn't Zentangle, it was more collage.
Mm.
But it was houses, so I guess they haven't left me yet.
So where are you going from here? Is the Zentangle continuing? Are you
I
kind of
think
saying,
I think it will always be part of my work just because I love the patterns and I love the intricate detail, but I'm doing more with paint pens and monoprinting and gel printing, which is sort of the same thing,
yeah,
and collage, various ways of creating papers to then cut up and use in collage.
yeah. These are the development stages that we kind of as artists all go through. I mean, you can't stay doing the one thing all your life. You'd die of boredom. But I
Yes,
think as an artist, you're constantly looking for, how does this connect to my next piece? How do I use something from here to get me an answer in a new media that I want to try? And a lot of times you borrow things from previous things, and you incorporate them into new works.
that's right. And something will happen in a piece, and you think, "Oh, I want to explore that a little more." So you sort of come back to it, and then it develops, and then it becomes more major. And
Yeah. This one feels very regal. There's this regal feeling of
Hmm.
the importance, but it maybe is a little bit more navigational to me. You know,
Yeah, it's there's something called a compass rose, and I think that's what was in the back of my mind with this. This is also on eco-dyed paper,
Yeah,
so a lot of the like some of the flowers around the edges and leaves were things that I saw in the paper,
wow. Yeah,
the tendrils. But I did have an idea of doing a compass rose, so that got sort of placed on top of the randomness of the eco dye,
yeah,
and then I worked with sort of both of those things together.
yeah. No, it's again a very ornate piece. That there's a lot of intricacies going on in here, but they're really well developed. I think, and like it's just got a really nice feeling.
Yeah.
And this last piece, can you tell us what happened here? This isn't all Zentangle, is it? On this piece,
Um,
what is the substrate?
it's on what used to be a wood plate.
Oh, okay.
What we're looking at is the bottom of the plate. There wasn't anything on it to uh, make it balanced. Like it was just completely rounded. And there's maybe an inch or an inch and a half of space behind this, but the central sort of whiter section with the tree design, the Celtic tree design, was a coaster made of bits of mother of pearl, some of which had broken off. So they sold it to me really cheap. And I drew on it to do this Celtic tree design. And then I think I probably carved out a bit of the wood so that it would sit into the wood. Then I did the Celtic interlacing patterns around. And the blue section is, there's some interference blue paint there. So at some angles, it will probably look black. And there's a chunk of crystal embedded in there.
Mm-hmm.
And around the inner circle, there's other little mother of pearl circles that I picked up at some store somewhere.
Okay.
And near the top, but inside the interlacing, are 3 tiny light blue gems.
Mm.
Wow. I call it watering the tree of life because the blues make me think of water and
No, it's nice to know that you don't just have to work on paper. Like this is becoming really collage based in not only in substrate but in texture and everything, and how Zentangle is the mandala shape as well, and it's filling. You've moved all your lives together and put it all together into one piece. Like their love of collage, Zentangle, and the multiplicity of like the use of gems and pearls and different things that can be in set, and they all belong together. Oh, there's a gem right there up top.
I know the killjoy is here, so there you have it. So the work is beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. So my question is, people watching around the globe, if they want to purchase it, what's the price range from what to what?
The smaller 5-inch pieces that we talked about, where I fixed the drawn tile onto the canvas, those are about $95.
Okay.
And up to I don't think we showed some of the larger pieces, maybe 30 inches. Those are into the 2,000 or 3,000s.
Okay. So between $95 and $2,000. So there you go.
More or less. Yep.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to get any of Margaret's stuff, her links will be below. If you can't figure that out, reach us at the show and we'll put you in touch with Paul. We'll put you in touch with Margaret and you'll be able to sell or buy some of her work. So there you go.
Yeah, that was very interesting. I've learned a lot today about that.
Yes.
A lot more than I thought I would. I didn't know very much about it other than what I had read, and I've seen Margaret's work before, and I'm going, how I've got to talk to her about how she does some of this stuff. But thank you very much for the.
And remember, it's not doodling. No doodling here. Not at all.
Oh, I know.
Doodling.
Well, doodling can be useful.
That's right. But no doodling here. This is how do you pronounce you do what's it called one more time?
Zentangle.
Zentangle. Okay. Hopefully we spell that correctly in the description. And if not, then it'll come out like zoo and it'll look fine. We'll put a zebra next to it. It'll be beautiful.
Zen, the Zen.
Yeah, I know. Tangle with a Zen and a tangle. There you go. Like my life is Zentangle. Very nice. Guys, it was a pleasure. Margaret, it was a pleasure meeting you. Love your work. Thank you very much for being here. And to everybody watching, thank you for being and spending the hour with us. Don't forget to subscribe and like. And Paul will be back with someone next Thursday. That doesn't do doodling or Zentangle. They do something different. And we'll go from there.
We have a landscape painter next week. Yeah.
Always interesting.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you have. And don't forget to subscribe and like, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see y'all next week. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.